What if the person saying I love you is secretly destroying the person you're becoming? The most dangerous wounds aren't always physical. They're the ones that convince you you're not enough. Today, you're going to uncover the hidden tactics narcissistic men use to gain control, why so many intelligent people get trapped, and how to reclaim the confidence they tried to take from you. If you've ever felt confused, constantly blamed, or emotionally drained in a relationship, stay with me until the end. One insight in this message could completely change the way you see yourself and the people you allow into your life. If this message speaks to the pain you've carried in silence, don't keep it to yourself. Sestia today, because every message here is a step toward reclaiming your confidence. Leave a comment saying, I choose myself, and make that your promise from this moment forward. Share this with someone who needs the courage to break free before it's too late. The most dangerous people in your life rarely announce themselves as a threat. They don't walk into the room wearing a warning sign. They don't introduce themselves by saying they're manipulative or emotionally controlling. They arrive with a smile that feels comforting, words that sound perfect, and confidence that makes you believe you finally found someone different. That's the first dark truth you need to understand. The greatest danger isn't the cruelty you eventually see. It's the charm that keeps you from seeing it in the beginning. A narcissistic man often knows exactly how to make a powerful first impression. He studies people. He notices what makes you laugh, what makes you feel appreciated, and what you've been missing. If you've been longing for attention, he gives you attention. If you've been craving understanding, he seems to understand you better than anyone else. If you've been waiting for someone to tell you that you're special, he'll say all the right words at exactly the right time. At first, it feels like a dream. You'll think, finally, someone sees me. You'll think, finally, someone appreciates me. You'll think, maybe this is what real love feels like. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. Is this genuine connection or is this calculated attention? Because there's a huge difference. Real love grows steadily. It takes time. It builds trust through consistency. It doesn't rush your emotions. It doesn't pressure you to ignore your instincts. It allows you to feel safe enough to be yourself. Manipulation, on the other hand, often moves at lightning speed. One day you're strangers. The next day you're hearing words that make it sound like you've known each other forever. Everything feels intense. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels perfect. And perfection should make you pause. Nobody is perfect. No relationship is perfect. No human being can meet every emotional need overnight. When someone seems too good to be true, wisdom says slow down. Emotion says hold on tighter. That's why so many people become trapped. They don't fall for the cruelty. They fall for the illusion. The charm becomes the mask. A mask is designed to hide what's underneath. It creates an image you want to believe. It distracts you from asking difficult questions. It encourages you to ignore the little moments that don't quite make sense. Maybe you notice that he becomes irritated when he isn't the center of attention. Maybe you realize he struggles to admit when he's wrong. Maybe he speaks badly about everyone from his past, claiming every failed relationship was someone else's fault. Maybe he expects constant praise, but offers very little genuine appreciation in return. Those moments matter. Those aren't random flaws. those are clues. And life has a way of whispering the truth before it ever has to shout it. The problem is that emotions are loud, while wisdom often speaks quietly. When you're overwhelmed by compliments, gifts, promises, and excitement, it's easy to silence that quiet inner voice telling you something feels off. Never underestimate the importance of your intuition. Your instincts exist for a reason. That uncomfortable feeling in your stomach, that moment when something doesn't quite add up, that small hesitation before you explain it away, those moments deserve your attention. Because your heart may want to believe the story, but your spirit often recognizes the truth long before your mind is willing to accept it. Here's something successful people understand in every area of life. Consistency reveals character. Anybody can be impressive for a weekend. Anybody can pretend for a month. Anybody can perform when they're trying to win something. But eventually, performance becomes exhausting. Eventually, the mask slips. Eventually, pressure reveals what's real. That's why you never judge someone's character by their best day. You watch how they handle disappointment. You watch how they respond to criticism. You watch how they treat people who have nothing to offer them. You watch whether their actions continue matching their words long after the excitement fades. Because words can be rehearsed, character cannot. And here's another truth worth remembering. Confidence and arrogance are not the same thing. A confident person lifts others up because they don't feel threatened. A narcissistic person often needs to feel superior. They don't simply want respect. They want admiration. They don't simply want love. They want control over how others see them. That's why their charm often feels magnetic in the beginning. It's carefully built to create an image that's difficult to question. But no mask lasts forever. Sooner or later, reality replaces performance. The compliments become criticism. The patience becomes frustration. The kindness becomes control. The attention becomes demands. And suddenly, you're wondering where the amazing person from the beginning disappeared. The painful answer is this: the mask disappeared. The real lesson isn't to become afraid of love. The lesson is to become wiser about trust. Take your time. Observe patterns. Listen more than you assume. Believe consistent actions over impressive promises. Remember that genuine love never requires you to abandon your judgment. The right person won't need a performance to earn your trust because their character will speak louder than their charm. And when you learn to value consistency over charisma, truth over appearances, and peace over excitement, you become far less likely to mistake a beautiful mask for a beautiful heart. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that control always looks aggressive. They imagine manipulation as shouting, threats, or obvious intimidation. But emotional control is often much quieter than that. It can sound like concern. It can look like affection. It can even disguise itself as love. That's what makes it so dangerous. By the time you recognize what's happening, you've already begun questioning yourself instead of questioning the person causing the confusion. A narcissistic man doesn't always seek control through physical strength. More often, he seeks control through emotional influence. He understands that if he can control how you think, how you feel, and how you see yourself, he won't have to control your actions directly. You'll begin doing it for him. You'll apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You'll explain yourself when no explanation is necessary. You'll carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. And little by little, you'll hand over your peace without realizing what you've lost. This is why manipulation is such a powerful weapon. It doesn't attack your body first. It attacks your confidence. It doesn't break down your door. It slowly breaks down your certainty. The strongest prison isn't always built with walls. Sometimes it's built with doubt. One of the most common tactics is making you question your own reality. You remember a conversation clearly, yet somehow you're told it's never happened. You express your feelings, and suddenly you're accused of being too sensitive, too dramatic, or impossible to please. Instead of discussing the real issue, the focus shifts to your reaction. Before long, you're no longer asking, why did he treat me that way? You're asking, am I overreacting? That's exactly where manipulation wants you to be. Another tactic is inconsistency. One day you're showered with attention, affection, and praise. The next day you're ignored, criticized, or treated as though you've done something wrong without any explanation. That emotional roller coaster creates confusion. Human beings naturally chase certainty, so when kindness disappears, you work harder to earn it back. You begin believing that if you just say the right thing, act the right way, or become a better version of yourself, everything will return to how it was in the beginning. But here's the painful truth. The goalposts keep moving. No matter how much you change, it never feels like enough. No matter how much you sacrifice, there's always another complaint. No matter how much love you give, you're left feeling emotionally empty. That's because manipulation isn't designed to create healthy relationships. It's designed to maintain control. Another powerful weapon is guilt. Suddenly, your boundaries become selfish. Your opinions become disrespectful. Your need for rest becomes laziness. Every time you choose yourself, you're made to feel as though you've done something wrong. Over time, you begin abandoning your own needs just to avoid conflict. You stop saying no because saying yes feels easier than dealing with the emotional consequences. Think about that for a moment. When peace only exists if you silence yourself, that isn't peace. That's surrender. Healthy love doesn't punish honesty. Healthy love doesn't require you to disappear so someone else can feel bigger. Healthy love creates room for two people to grow together, not one person shrinking so the other can stay comfortable. Manipulation also thrives on isolation. It doesn't always begin by saying, don't see your family or don't talk to your friends. Instead, it plants small seeds of doubt. You're told certain people don't understand you. You're encouraged to spend less time with those who challenge unhealthy behavior. Slowly, the voices that once reminded you of your value become quieter, while the manipulator's voice becomes the loudest one in your life. And when that happens, perspective becomes difficult. If the only person defining your worth is the one benefiting from your self-doubt, you've entered dangerous territory. This is why strong boundaries are so important. Boundaries are not walls built to keep love out. They're doors that allow healthy people in while keeping harmful behavior from taking over your life. They protect your peace, your dignity, and your identity. Never let anyone convince you that respecting yourself is an act of selfishness. It isn't selfish to expect honesty. It isn't selfish to ask for respect. It isn't selfish to protect your mental and emotional well-being. Those aren't unreasonable demands. They're the foundation of every healthy relationship, here's something worth remembering. People who truly love you don't fear your confidence. They celebrate it. They don't want you confused because confident people make clear decisions. They don't want you constantly apologizing because mutual respect doesn't require endless guilt. They don't need to weaken your spirit to feel strong themselves. The greatest defense against manipulation is clarity. Learn to trust patterns instead of promises. Listen carefully to actions instead of beautiful speeches. Pay attention to how someone treats you when they're frustrated, disappointed, or challenged. That's where character is revealed, not during the easy moments, but during the difficult ones. Most importantly, never allow someone else's opinion to become louder than your own inner voice. Your instincts, your values, and your self-respect are gifts worth protecting. The moment you stop seeking permission to believe what you see, everything begins to change. Confusion starts giving way to clarity. Fear starts giving way to courage. And control begins losing its power the moment you decide that your peace is no longer negotiable. Because the strongest person in the room isn't the one who controls everyone else. The strongest person is the one who refuses to surrender their identity, their dignity, and their truth to anyone, no matter how convincing the mask may be. Your confidence is one of the most valuable things you will ever possess. It shapes the way you walk into a room, the way you speak, the way you make decisions, and the way you believe you deserve to be treated. It is the quiet voice inside you that says, I have value. That is exactly why a narcissistic man often targets it. Because the moment your confidence begins to disappear, your ability to recognize unhealthy treatment begins to disappear with it. This doesn't happen overnight. No one wakes up one morning feeling completely broken after feeling completely whole the night before. Confidence isn't usually stolen in one dramatic moment. It's taken piece by piece, conversation by conversation, criticism by criticism, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. At first, the comments may seem small. A joke about the way you dress, a remark about your intelligence, a comparison between you and someone else, a subtle criticism hidden behind a smile. When you react, you're told you're too sensitive. You're told you can't take a joke. You're told you're making a big deal out of nothing. So instead of questioning the comment, you begin questioning yourself. That's how self-doubt begins. And self-doubt is dangerous because it grows quietly. Once you begin doubting your appearance, you'll start seeking approval. Once you begin doubting your decisions, you'll start asking for permission. Once you begin doubting your worth, you'll start accepting treatment you never would have tolerated before. Think about that for a moment. The person you once were had standards. You had dreams. You had opinions. You had confidence. Then slowly, without realizing it, you began shrinking yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You stop speaking your mind because every disagreement turns into an argument. You stop sharing your achievements because somehow your success becomes a threat instead of something to celebrate. You stop expressing your emotions because you're made to feel guilty every time you do. Little by little, you become quieter, not because you've lost your voice, but because you've been taught that your voice doesn't matter. That is one of the cruelest forms of emotional damage. When someone convinces you that your thoughts, your feelings, And your needs are always less important than theirs. They aren't simply controlling your behavior. They're rewriting the story you tell yourself about who you are. And if you're not careful, you'll begin believing that story. You'll start thinking you're difficult to love. You'll start believing you're never enough. You'll convince yourself that every relationship is supposed to feel exhausting. But none of those things are true. The truth is that healthy love doesn't make you feel smaller. Healthy love makes you feel safer. It gives you room to grow instead of forcing you to shrink. It celebrates your strengths instead of competing with them. It corrects you with respect instead of humiliating you with criticism. There is a powerful difference between correction and destruction. Someone who genuinely cares about you may challenge you to become better, but they'll do it with kindness, patience, and encouragement. Someone who wants control often uses criticism to weaken your confidence until they become the only source of validation you trust. That's why you may find yourself working harder and harder for compliments that become increasingly rare. You begin chasing approval like it's oxygen. Every kind word feels like a reward. Every cold moment feels like punishment. And before you know it, your emotional well-being depends on someone else's changing mood. That's not love. That's emotional dependence. Never allow another person's inconsistency to determine your value. Your worth doesn't increase because someone praises you. And it doesn't decrease because someone refuses to appreciate you. Your value existed before they entered your life. It remains after they leave. And no opinion has the power to erase it unless you hand over that power yourself. One of the strongest decisions you'll ever make is refusing to measure yourself through someone else's approval. You don't need permission to believe you're capable. You don't need constant reassurance to know you're enough. You don't need another person to confirm what God, life, and your own journey have already proven, that you've survived challenges before, you've overcome obstacles before, and you're stronger than you've been led to believe. Remember who you were before the constant criticism. Remember the dreams you carried. Remember the confidence you once had, because that person isn't gone. That person has simply been buried beneath fear, doubt, and emotional exhaustion. And buried doesn't mean destroyed. It means waiting to rise again. Every day you choose to speak kindly to yourself. You're rebuilding every boundary you set. You're rebuilding every unhealthy pattern you refuse to accept. You're rebuilding. Every decision you make based on self-respect instead of fear, you're rebuilding. Confidence doesn't return all at once. It returns one choice at a time, one courageous conversation, one healthy boundary, one act of self-respect, one reminder that your voice deserves to be heard, one decision to stop apologizing for existing. Here's the truth that can change your life. The people who truly belong in your life will never require you to become less in order for them to feel like more. They won't ask you to sacrifice your identity to keep the relationship alive. They won't make you earn basic respect. They'll appreciate your strength, honor your boundaries, and encourage your growth. So never let anyone convince you that you're too much, when in reality, you're simply asking for what every human being deserves: respect, honesty, kindness, and genuine love. Protect your confidence with everything you've got, because once you know your worth, manipulation loses its grip. The moment you stop looking for someone else to define your value is the moment you become impossible to control. And that is where true freedom begins. There comes a moment in every difficult journey when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't always arrive with a dramatic argument or a life-changing event. Sometimes it comes in complete silence. You find yourself sitting alone, emotionally exhausted, wondering why you're constantly trying to earn love that should never have required proving in the first place. That quiet moment is often where freedom begins, not because everything has changed, but because your eyes have finally opened. The hardest part of escaping a narcissistic relationship is not always walking away from the person. It's walking away from the version of yourself that kept believing things would eventually change. Hope can be a beautiful thing, but when hope keeps you trapped in repeated pain, it becomes a chain instead of a blessing. Many people stay because they remember the beginning. They remember the promises. They remember the attention. They remember the person they thought they had met. But here's the reality that changes everything. You cannot build your future on someone's potential while ignoring their consistent behavior. Potential does not create healthy relationships, but tatars do. Anyone can promise tomorrow. Character is revealed by what they consistently do today. This is why recognizing the pattern is so powerful. The moment you stop looking at isolated incidents and start looking at repeated behaviors, the picture becomes much clearer. One rude comment may be a bad day. Constant disrespect is a pattern. One broken promise may be a mistake. Endless broken promises become a lifestyle. One disagreement is normal. Constant manipulation is not. Life always leaves clues. The question is whether you're willing to believe them. One of the greatest traps people fall into is believing they can love someone into becoming a different person. They think, if I'm more patient, he'll change. If I explain myself one more time, he'll understand. If I love him enough, everything will get better. But real change cannot be forced from the outside. People change when they choose responsibility. People grow when they acknowledge their actions. People improve when they are willing to face uncomfortable truths. You cannot carry someone to a destination they refuse to walk toward themselves. And while you're spending years trying to fix another person's character, your own dreams, your own peace, and your own confidence may slowly be slipping away. Think about how much energy is wasted trying to convince someone to value what they have. Imagine if that same energy was invested in rebuilding yourself. Imagine if every tear became determination. Imagine if every disappointment became wisdom. Imagine if every painful lesson became the foundation for a stronger future. That's when your life begins to transform. Recognition is not about becoming bitter. It is about becoming awake enough to stop making excuses for repeated disrespect, awake enough to recognize manipulation without defending it, awake enough to understand that love without respect is not healthy love. One of the most important questions you can ask yourself is this: how do I consistently feel after spending time with this person? Not how you felt during the first few months, not how you hope to feel one day. How do you consistently feel now? Do you feel safe? Do you feel respected? Do you feel encouraged? Do you feel heard? Or do you constantly feel anxious, confused, emotionally drained, and afraid of saying the wrong thing? Your emotional state is often telling you a story your heart has been trying to ignore. Healthy relationships don't require you to constantly survive them. They allow you to thrive inside them. Never confuse emotional chaos with passion. Never confuse unpredictability with excitement. Never confuse control with protection. Real love brings stability. Real love creates peace. Real love allows both people to grow without fear. Another powerful sign of freedom is when you stop blaming yourself for another person's choices. For too long, many people carry the weight of mistakes they didn't make. They believe they weren't attractive enough, patient enough, supportive enough, or understanding enough. But another person's manipulation is not proof of your failure. Someone else's inability to love in a healthy way is not evidence that you are unworthy of healthy love. The moment you stop carrying responsibility for someone else's character, your shoulders become lighter. You begin breathing differently, thinking differently, living differently. That's what freedom feels like. Freedom is realizing you don't have to win every argument. You don't have to explain your worth. You don't have to beg for basic respect. You don't have to prove that your feelings matter. They already do. Here's another truth that many people need to hear. Walking away from repeated emotional harm is not weakness. It is courage. It takes courage to leave familiarity. It takes courage to disappoint people who expect you to keep tolerating unhealthy behavior. It takes courage to choose uncertainty over guaranteed unhappiness. But courage has always been the price of a better future. Every great transformation begins with one difficult decision, the decision to stop settling, the decision to stop making excuses, the decision to stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Remember, your life is too valuable to spend it waiting for someone else to become the person they keep promising they'll be. Believe what consistent actions reveal. Trust the lessons your experience has taught you. Honor the voice inside you that has been whispering the truth all along. Because the day you recognize the pattern is the day you stop becoming its victim. You become its student instead. And students learn, they grow, and they move forward. They don't stay trapped in yesterday's pain. They use yesterday's lessons to build tomorrow's strength. The moment you see clearly, you reclaim your power. And once your eyes are open, you never have to live in the darkness of denial again. Healing is one of the most misunderstood journeys in life. Many people believe it begins the moment the relationship ends. They think that once the phone number is blocked, the messages stop, or the distance is created, everything will suddenly feel better. But the truth is, leaving the relationship is often only the first step. The real healing begins when you stop searching for the approval of the person who convinced you that you were never enough. That is where your life starts changing. For a long time, you may have measured your value by someone else's attention. A compliment from them made your day. Their silence ruined your peace. Their approval felt like success. Their criticism felt like failure. Without realizing it, you handed them the power to decide how you felt about yourself. But no human being should ever have that kind of authority over your identity. Your worth cannot be determined by someone whose own sense of value depends on controlling others. The day you understand that truth is the day you begin taking your power back. Healing begins with one simple but life-changing decision. choosing yourself. Now, choosing yourself does not mean becoming selfish. It does not mean closing your heart to the world. It does not mean refusing to trust anyone ever again. It means refusing to abandon yourself just to keep someone else happy. There is a huge difference. For too long, you may have ignored your own needs. You overlooked disrespect. You stayed silent when something hurt you. You accepted less than you deserved because you feared losing the relationship. But here's a question worth asking. What did it cost you to keep holding on? How many sleepless nights? How many tears? How many dreams did you postpone? How many times did you apologize for things that were never your fault? How many pieces of yourself did you sacrifice trying to save someone who never wanted to change? Sometimes the greatest loss isn't the relationship. Sometimes the greatest loss is losing to keeping yourself alive. That is why healing isn't about getting another relationship as quickly as possible. Healing is about rebuilding the relationship you have with yourself. It is learning to trust your own judgment again. It is believing your feelings deserve respect. It is remembering that your voice matters. It is rediscovering the confidence that was buried beneath years of self-doubt. Think of yourself like a house after a storm. The storm may have broken windows. It may have damaged the roof. It may have left everything looking unfamiliar. But the foundation is still there. And foundations can be rebuilt into something even stronger than before. Pain changes people, but it doesn't have to make you bitter. It can make you wiser. It can teach you the importance of boundaries. It can teach you the value of peace. It can teach you that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. Boundaries are one of the greatest acts of self-respect. Many people fear setting them because they're afraid others will leave. But ask yourself this: if someone only stays because you have no boundaries, are they truly there because they love you or because they benefit from your silence? The right people won't resent your boundaries. They'll respect them, because healthy people understand that love without respect cannot survive. Another important part of healing is forgiving yourself, not because you caused the pain, but because you've spent too much time blaming yourself for someone else's choices. Forgive yourself for ignoring the warning signs. Forgive yourself for believing promises that were never kept. Forgive yourself for staying longer than you should have. You made the best decisions you could with the understanding you had at the time. Now you know more. And knowledge gives you the opportunity to choose differently. Never let your past become a life sentence. Let it become a life lesson. The strongest people are not those who have never been hurt. The strongest people are those who refuse to let pain define the rest of their story. Every sunrise reminds us that darkness never has the final word. Every new day offers another chance to become stronger than yesterday. Every healthy decision is another brick placed in the foundation of your future. Choose friends who remind you of your worth. Choose environments that protect your peace. Choose habits that strengthen your mind and your spirit. Choose conversations that inspire growth instead of fear. Most importantly, choose to speak to yourself with the same kindness you so freely offered to others. You deserve that kindness too. One day, you'll look back on this chapter, not with shame, but with gratitude. Not because the pain was good, but because it taught you what real love should never require. You'll recognize how much stronger you've become. You'll notice how much wiser your decisions are. You'll realize you no longer chase people who make you question your value. Instead, you'll protect your peace with confidence. Remember this as you move forward. Your future does not belong to the people who tried to break your spirit. It belongs to the person you decide to become today. Every time you choose self-respect over self-sacrifice, truth over illusion, courage over fear, and peace over chaos, you reclaim another piece of your life. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you'll wake up and smile again. Not because someone finally gave you the love you were searching for, but because you discovered something far more powerful. You learned that the love, respect, strength, and confidence you were chasing in someone else had been waiting inside you all along. That is real healing. That is real freedom. And that is the moment no one can ever take your power away again.